Where does learning begin with our dogs? How can we create a scenario in which we can easily observe our dog's needs, limitations, and abilities? Can we create a behavior the dog will do when they are not quite sure what we want? Welcome to Learning About Dogs, a podcast for people who love learning about dogs. I'm Sue McGuire, the manager of a canine behavior program at a nonprofit animal shelter near San Francisco. And with me, of course, is Kay Laurence of Learning About Dogs. In this episode, Kay and I talk about the concept and the use of base behaviors. All right, let's. All right, off we go. Base behavior. Uh, uh, is it a starting behavior? Let's try to define that because I hear it tossed around out there like, what is your dog's base behavior? And I'd always learned it as the starting position in which other behaviors generate from. Is that correct, or do we need to look at the definition of it a
I
little
think
bit
we need
more?
to think about the common thing is what I might consider is the base behavior, and what somebody else would choose as the base behavior. It's a little bit like default. Default has three clear definitions, each of which is different. The factory settings are known as the default for something like a computer, i.e. what it arrives at with no further learning. That's the default status. Or a default is what the chooser would do when they can't make a choice. It's what they will go back to doing if they don't know how to do something. So often with people, the classic one is when you walk into something like an airport terminal, or you come out, you just landed, you don't know where to go. As you're standing reading the signs, when you don't know how to choose, you'll stand still. So under those conditions, that default behavior is somewhat of a nuisance if it's in the doorway where everyone else is trying to get through. So that's that default behavior. And then the third one is to default, which is slightly different emphasis, where you failed to make a payment. So same word, three completely different definitions. I think when I was looking at drive, I came across 17 different uses of the word drive. So for somebody to say, I'd like to have my dog in drive, I'm like, what on earth do you understand that to be? Because we can't use common terminology and not then follow up with what we understand it to be, particularly when we're beginning a conversation. So a base behavior, besides being the dictionary definition of something as immoral, a base behavior, in our terms, it could be a default, i.e. it's what the dog will resort to when they don't know what to do, and that is often learnt, and you can actually set a default behavior. So if I go to the fridge and pick up a box of treats, or I feeding the dogs, I will have their behavior that they do while they're waiting for this to happen could be their default behavior. You could choose they go to their bed, or they stand and watch you, or whatever they do. You can choose your default, but it needs to be set. So that could be a base behavior as well. Or it could be where I intend to start. If I was maybe teaching a dog to learn how to separate left paw from right paw, the base behavior might be a sit or a stand or a down, depending on how I'm going to teach it. And then the dog would keep going back to that base behavior, and any new behaviors I'm teaching would start from that base behavior. So I would reinforce the base behavior as much as I would reinforce the action. We could then say,
But don't you have to go? You mentioned earlier you have to teach the base
you have
behavior.
to establish what you want the base behavior to be under those conditions, under these contingencies. So if I ask my dog to adopt a standing position because they've been trained to stand, and the stand is not just an accident, it's a conscious awareness, I might start by reinforcing standing 5, 6, 7 times, and then I might place a target in a certain spot where the dog's front leg moves to that target. In between doing the action, they would return to the base behavior. But I can also shape out of the base behavior as well. But I'll come to that in a minute.
Okay.
So whether it's an opening behavior, foundation. So if I'm taking my dogs for a walk out on the lead, to me, what's always a base behavior is connection. Yes, if we're together and I expect my dog to respond to me and me respond to the dog, what I want to start with is connection. So that's my underlying behavior, if you like. For shaping a paw move, that connection is probably standing in front looking at me. But if we're walking down the street, the base behavior would be connected to me. Connected in the sense that if I come to a stop, I will probably transmit I'm going to come to a stop. Oh, excuse me. 3 or 4 steps before. It's not like a sudden halt that you get in obedience unless there's something that causes us to suddenly stop. So 2 or 3 steps takes me to stop. If the dog is connected, they would come to a stop in time with me. If they're probably not connected, I would stop and they would go on walking forward without realizing I've stopped. Equally, it works the other way around. If the dog needs to come to a stop because they want to sniff something or lift a leg, I would not find myself forward on the end of the lead. I would come to a stop at the same time as the dog. So those sort of connections to me is underpinning everything we're doing. So connection is an awareness of each other, how we're changing, how we're adapting as we do stuff. So connection to me is where we start. It's our opening. It can be our base behavior, if you like, is connection. So if I'm teaching the dog something like, well, the classic one was probably, say I was teaching Sleepy, and I wanted the dog to put their chin down when they're already in a lying down position. For most dogs, I would use the settled on one hip down, not the lying down. For some dogs that have a tight elbow where the elbows are well tucked into the body, they don't tend to want to put their chin to the floor. Under those conditions, they'd probably put their chin on one leg. But often if they're lying to one side, their front legs are more spread and they can actually get their chin to the floor. So the base position would be lying comfortably on one hip. Their head would be resting normally with the muzzle level. It's not on the floor. It's not doing anything. And I would mark and feed this position 2 or 3 times. So they go, oh, this is neat. This is easy. I haven't got to do anything. I like being this gives me a good feeling. And I get success. If you like, we get a bit of momentum that just being like this is cool. I might then give a treat in a position slightly above base position. So I actually elevate the dog's head to take a treat. So I'm taking the dog out of base position. And they'd eat the treat there, and then they think, okay, well, I think I'll move back to where I got treats before. And by moving back to base position, I get the head to lower. So I can then mark the action of lowering the head and then feed with the head back up in the air again. And you can do a similar thing with the front feet. Mm-hmm. So I could feed if the dog was standing and I go to put a piece of food behind a front leg, they naturally move the foot out the way. And to be able to get that piece of food, they have to do the old giraffe stand, where they spread their legs to get their head to the floor. But because I've already set the base position 5 or 6 times of standing upright with the feet together, that means after they've eaten that treat, they come back to the base position. And then I have that clean action of coming back to the base position. So very often a return to the base position is the very action that I'm trying to elicit just by setting if you like, a home base. So often it's our treat placement takes the dog out of base position, but because base position is the place that their history tells them they get reinforcement, returning to that position gets them a treat. You can imagine it as a location. So I might lure the dog to stand on the platform, mark we're on the platform, but I actually toss the food half a dozen feet away. So the dog will run over there and collect the food, and then they go, well, she was feeding me when I was on that platform, so that becomes the base position, and then they naturally return to the base position. The interesting thing with the platform one is that if you didn't do this with a marker, you would expect the dog to just keep returning to where you throw the food. So if the dog is standing in front of me and I'm facing 12 o'clock, the dog's facing me. So if you like, I'm 6 o'clock. And I click and I throw the food back out to 1 o'clock. And I might throw the food 12 times to 1 o'clock. The dog will always go back to where they got the click, not where they fed the food. Which, if somebody's never seen marker training, that is a bit revolutionary. And this is the purpose, to me, one of the reasons of using a clicker is that we can separate what the dog is learning from the reinforcement. If we didn't use the clicker, you could just keep feeding on the platform, and that would be great. And the dog would say, well, this is an easy thing. I get fed when I'm here, yada, yada, yada. To me, it's about teaching the dog to move to the platform as a choice, or to move their foot as a choice, or to lower their head as a choice, not necessarily about where they just got the reinforcer. So that base position starts to become a place the dog chooses to go to, a place the dog will choose if they're not sure what to do. It's all of those things.
I was going to say, what a great pathway of communication to your dog for if you did not get that return to base behavior. Wow, I mean, just so much information your learner is telling you in the process of doing whatever.
And we have base position is at your side when the dog's on a leash. So where should the dog be? Well, roughly at my side. Cool. Okay. So they go over there, they have a sniff. That was good. I think I'm going to have to leave a message here as well. That's cool. You ready to go forward? Sure. And they return to base position, which is at your side. So, teaching this base position to me is a critical part of communicating what you expect the dog to do, particularly if they're unsure what to do, or particularly in situations where dogs are sensitive to the environment and they don't know what to do. We can't expect them to walk on a loose lead if we've never taught them what the base behavior is. Apart from the obvious that the lead is not a behavior. So, yes, if you return to base behavior, you'll get reinforced. Oh, very cool. And we have to teach that. So, just teaching a young dog just by tossing the food out of base behavior, and they naturally return to base behavior because that is where they have been reinforced, and clicking and tossing out of base behavior teaches them how to come to this position, how to adjust their location relative to us.
And I think that's a really important aspect, is that people tend not, when I first started, I was very narrow focused and thinking that base behaviors were static behavior. They were stationary behaviors. It was a sit down or stand. But base behaviors have a lot of different varieties. You mentioned a return to heel, if you will. Even if you're walking off leash in an open space, there's a base behavior involved. You have to teach base behavior.
And it's also a measurement. It's also a measurement of, at this moment in time, can we go forwards? So if we were out with the dog and the dog has lost base behavior, they've gone sideways out to the full extent of the lead and they are fixated on something happening over there. And if I come to a stop and they cannot return to base behavior, then at that time we're unlikely to get learning that is going to be of any use to us. So it's a measurement of the dog's state of mind, whether they are connecting by coming to base behavior, and if you may seeking information as to what to do next. So often I see people wanting to remove things from the behaviors they don't like the dog being further forward to the end of the lead, but in actual fact they haven't spent enough time teaching the dog where to be in the first place, rather than just teach the dog not to pull. Well, what do you want instead? Well, I want you to be in this base behavior. Oh, okay, well, teach me that first. Don't teach me not to do something until you've taught me what you want to do, what I can do to be successful.
I don't think people really understand how to teach the base behavior of walking with a person in connection. I mean, and is it more than just what I, derisively say, mozzarella cheese at the pants seam? I mean, it has to be something more than that.
I don't know.
Well, I see an over dependence on feeding at the pants.
Okay.
As that is a way of creating your connection or your base behavior.
Go on. You spend a week in Scotland. Pants, don't forget, up to us are underpants. So when you say mozzarella at the underpants,
slacks.
So we become trousers. Trousers.
What do you say?
You're in Scotland. Trousers. Just takes me a minute. Yeah,
In America,
yeah,
okay, yeah,
yeah.
in America, we don't
No, I
walk
know,
around
neither
having
do we.
candies. Uh,
Let alone have mozzarella there. Anyway, yeah. So I think there's two things. One is you can lure the dog to be in that position. But this goes back to the luring thing. If you're always guiding the dog to do it, we're not actually teaching the dog to do it without guidance. So personally, I don't use food on the walk. Yes, I want the connection and the feeling of connection to be the reinforcer. So even just standing together, it can be reinforcing if we're connected. If I have to lure it, that would be an extremely naive dog that just didn't know that people offered something like connection. And anybody that likes to gather data is a little bit like talking about energy. Yeah, what's that then? How do you measure it? Well, you got to feel it to do it. Okay, so can I see it? Yes. To measure it, is like I just said. It's about if I do something, then I expect my walking partner to respond, and that is my measure of whether they're connected. And you'll actually see people doing this. So if you're walking down the street having a conversation, and you start to slow down, or you stop to look at something, the other person is probably unconsciously going to copy you or slow down at your speed if they can. And that to me is that measure of connection. The disconnect comes when the one person has a longer stride than the other, and they don't adjust their stride to suit the slower, whichever's the slowest stride. You see somebody walking a child along the street holding their hand, and that child is on the brink of running because they're trying to keep up. To me, the adult should actually slow down or shorten their stride so that the child can stay connected without having to be dragged along. Same with the dogs. We have to find a common speed that's comfortable for both of us. So trying to measure connection, not easy, but it's definitely there when it's there. Do we know it's reinforcing? Sure, because when we use connection as the outcome for certain behaviors, those behaviors increase very quickly. So being at your side in base behavior, if that is not the place where you get connection, we're probably not going to be able to walk together.
Oh, it's so important. Trying to define this to my clients and to my volunteers at the shelter, it's a sticky wicky. I almost look like they, get it. I use an art analogy. I know art when I see it. I define it myself. Don't have somebody else tell me what art is.
Yes.
Most modern art gives me
Yes.
the chills.
Yes. Yes, but yeah.
How do we get around it not sounding namby-pamby
Well, I
or
think it's
hippie-ish
about
or
experiencing it. So if we do a day workshop, which is about, I call it connected walking together, the lead is irrelevant. It should not be part of the package. We should not use it in the name, neither use it as a function. It's a safety device to prevent the dog from getting run over, and I often swap the lead out for a piece of paracord, which is this very fine cord, and I tie it to the person's trousers, the belt loops on the trousers, which you don't have on your pants.
the pants.
If you've got belt loops on your pants, you're in trouble. And I'll tie it on there so their hands are free. Bird, they want to hold on to the paracord. Well, paracord's not good on your hands. So this paracord is probably 10 foot long. And it just trails on the ground. And it's just around as a safety device to stop gross error. And as we go around the yard, or we walk down the driveway, or we're walking wherever we're going, the dog is always safe on that 10-foot diameter, radius of the line. And just teaching them that if they connect with us and we connect with them, you'll see this walk start to come together. So it starts from often the dog might be right at the end of the line, focused on the birds in the yard. Yeah, and this is a farmyard, so there's plenty of grain and rubbish around that attracts the birds in. And the dog's staring at these birds. Now, in the corner of their eye, they'll see what we're doing. If we are connecting to that behavior, we would be standing and backing the dog doing that behavior, which means we stand and focus on exactly the same thing as them. And that endorses that behavior. That's how one dog backs another dog. So backing is where two hunting dogs learn to, they call it honoring as well in the old days. So if one sheepdog is watching the sheep, the other one would stand slightly behind them, also endorsing that behavior. If one gun dog is pointing to a bird in the grass, the other dog might not be able to see it or smell it, but they have to learn to stand still. Otherwise, they could flush this bird before somebody's ready to kill it, either the dog or people. So backing is standing by the side of the person going, yep, I'll hold your jacket. You're here for the fight. Don't worry, I'm with you. So that connection then adds more power to the behavior of standing, looking at the birds on the yard. But if I half turn myself away and I look in a different direction, I might turn myself away about 90 degrees. I would keep an eye on the dog in my peripheral vision, but I'm not backing what they're looking at. I'm looking at something else. I might be staring at clouds. It doesn't matter what I'm looking at. But what I'm not doing is looking at what they're fixed on. You'll see them look at you out the corner of your eye and go, oh, okay, so you're not doing this either, are you? I go, no, I'm not bothered about that. Whatever. No, not bothered. Okay. So you'll very quickly see their focus start to dissolve, unless they're so fixated on it they're not aware of us. And then as they start to move towards us to say, okay, I'm done with that, we can move off together. Now that moving off together starts to become the new connection after that connection was lost. Now, if you go around the yard and come back to that spot again, as we approach the same spot, you'll see the dogs start to orientate towards us to see if we're going to do the same process again. So they're already anticipating the fact that we're not going to fixate or look at the birds on the yard, and they'll move with us as we move off and past it. So, it's the same. It's about me stopping to let the dog sniff something, and I'm quite happy on that. I don't stand and stare at what they're sniffing, because I can't smell it anyway. But I will be standing there looking the way I intend to go when you're ready. Cool, says the dog, that's fine. And when they look at me in the corner of their eye, they can see that I'm ready to move on. I'm not pulling them to move on. I'm just saying, that's all right, when you're ready, I'm ready to go as soon as you are. Okay, and they'll finish what they're doing, they'll join me, and then we move off together. So that mixture of courtesy and giving them time to do what they need to do and giving me time to do what I need to do, and that behavior increases very quickly. So I would say it is connection and courtesy that's putting those two situations together. So by the time we've done about 30 to 40 minutes of walking this way, everyone is breathing so much better and just quietly walking around doing what they do without having to shout, pull, click, treat, or any of this stuff, and they're just walking together. I think our own, if you like, default behaviors of, if you're walking towards somebody that you don't know or a stranger's coming towards you, it is natural to look at them. And that itself, for some dogs, can be a pretty strong cue to look at them. So we might know that, okay, I'm just taking a note that you're wearing that red jacket again, and that probably is not the best colour for you. But out of the peripheral vision, the dog's probably thinking, I'm going to kill that dog. Yes, because we are focused on that person. So these connections and the way we behave are continually transmitted to the dogs, particularly the dogs that have learned to be sensitive to the environment. So, you've seen the classic...
Yeah, we've talked about that
before. The classic walk and scan. That's a pretty good way to teach a dog to be a patrol dog. Walk and scan. Scan to the left, scan to the right.
If you're a scanning person, your dog
and
is
which
a
come first.
Yeah.
And sometimes the scanning is a social scanning. You're looking to see, oh, look, I've got a new puppy. I wonder if anybody's noticed. And you're looking around to try and make some attention-seeking eye contact with people that would just smile and go, oh, aren't you lucky? I suppose does the same happen with babies? I'm not quite sure. But yes, you'll see it when somebody's walking a new baby in a pram down the street. They'll tend to do the look what I have, look what I've done type of scanning.
Okay, I have to confess something. When I was hiking in Scotland, I so desperately wanted to say hi to the dogs on the trails, and of course they completely ignored me. And they were so strongly connected with their person. I went, okay, yeah, now I get it. I'm that person. I'm that ugly American.
Can I say hello?
They said, oh.
No, I'm on a walk. Why would I want to say hello to you?
I stopped myself pretty quick.
Oh, good for you. Good for you.
Oh, well. Yeah, I can't. Yeah, I'm slow at learning, but Lots of collies. Lots
Yes,
of
they're
collies. That's what I like.
pretty cheap up
On the
there.
trails. Awfully.
Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, every litter the farmer has, he wants one or two, his mate wants one, and the rest will go to walkers that are passing by. Collies for sale.
Yes, pretty much. Exactly.
Yeah.
Or to give away. So if we do talk about connection as our base behavior, we talk about a base behavior being possibly a stationary sit down or stand. But base behaviors can also be
Yes.
locations,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
How would a location be used?
well, like the platform one. So I might ask
Uh
the
huh.
dog to do a reverse of this, so that the dog is on the platform, which could be their dog bed or wherever they're stationing, and I call or reinforce the dog in this position. So the dog is in the bed, I mark, I go to the dog, I feed in the dog's bed. So we set up the base position to start with, and we're looking for the base position giving us information that the dog is comfortable in this position. They, if you like, they comprehend this is where to be, and they're quite happy to hold this position whilst we collect the food and return to them to feed them breakfast in bed. So I might even stand by this station and throw the treats away, and the dog comes back to the station, and I might throw the treat behind me, so they come past me and go take a step or two towards the bed, get in the bed, turn around, look at me, cool, have a treat. And I might toss the treat out again. So I like to see that they not only are comfortable in this position, but they understand that returning to this position gets another cycle of reinforcement. After that, I can just start to move myself away, and the position is not relative to me, it's relative to the location. So the place they are could be their crate or the platform or their bed, and they return to the bed going away from me. Yes, going back towards this bed. So that then is a location that the dogs have learned is the base start. So they're going away from us rather than actually towards us. But you have to be clear, if you're going to train something, what should the dog be doing if they're unsure what to do? And if you're not clear about that, then I'm not sure I'd start training anything. This is the first plan. What are you going to click? Well, when he's doing it nicely. Okay, what does that look like? Well,
Like,
good ones. Okay. What's that look like? I mean, the
okay.
classic one is teaching the puppy to sit or lie down, and this is taught in front of you because that's easier for the human. We've now associated the sit and down with a location in front of you. So if you're walking this puppy 4 weeks
Right.
later and you say to it sit, it's going to return to that position in front of you because that's where you establish this behavior happens. So if you like, the sit and down are already locked into a location of in front of you. And if you ask them to do it out of the base position, not in front of you, at your side, they look at you like you've gone out, like, stupid woman. Yes, and they want to try and return to where they learnt that behavior, which again would be the base position.
Yep. See that a lot. Yeah.
We are, we're all students of behavior, but sometimes we forget to be students of our own behavior. Our own behavior, even with luring. If I was going to pick up a coin and give it to you, there's a certain way I'd hold the coin in my fingertips and point it to you for you to take it. So that's the default for people giving food to a dog, but it's probably one of the worst or easiest ways to get bitten. Crocodile feeding.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I've spent quite a few happy hours feeding some orphaned crows. And this is raw meat. Fortunately, we feed it from a pair of tweezers, but it's absolute crocodile feeding, and you really do not want to make your fingers the tweezers that go down the dog's throat. No. So if I was going to give you coins, it would be a little unusual for me to give you coins from an open hand where you had to take them from me. It's usually the other way around. Or a tip is something that's in your fingertips that you pass to somebody else. So that's a human default based behavior, and that's often what gets us into trouble.
Kay,
Our own.
Yeah, I'm kind of struggling a little bit with, am I anthropomorphizing? And when I say, I want to be able to teach my dog, if they don't know what to do this. Isn't that like, I don't know, I'm just sort of trying to wrap my brain around thinking that, if I were working with Mr. Hank Williams, who I've taught stand with stillness ad nauseum
Mhm.
around me, isn't it a bit of a leap for me to say he's doing that because he doesn't know what else to do, or is he doing that because that was just a hotly reinforced position?
Isn't it both?
Yeah, I don't. I mean,
I think training is about providing information. I mean, there's nothing worse than, can you imagine turning up in a classroom when you were a child and you didn't know what desks and chairs were for?
mm,
Yes, you just mill around the room not knowing what to do. You know, I've been to workshops that are not desk based. Classic one would be the glass blowing workshop, where we all just stood very close to the doorway. Apart from the fact it was hot over there, you know, because we just didn't know what to do. And then the teacher says, okay, I'm going to need you to come in and stand in a circle here so that you can see what I do and I know that you're safe. Yes, this is an area that's highly dangerous in certain things. So having a clear way to communicate what to do under different conditions gives you confidence. And even when we're training people to do, the hear work to music or performances in front of people, the fearful aspect of it is, oh God, and somebody's very, very nervous about it. I would say, so what are you nervous about? Well, I'm fearful of not knowing what to do if. I said, so let's go through it. Okay, we'll have 10 things that could really put the shivers up your spine. Number one, dog goes for a dump in the ring. What are you going to do? Laugh, yes. Then what? Then you're going to look for the steward who should come into the ring with a plastic bag to pick it up. Oh dear, it can happen to everybody. And we say, thank you very much, judges, and we leave the ring. Okay, good. We got that one sorted. Number two, what could happen? Well, the dog just stands there and looks at me like he's never had a day of training. Okay, so that could happen to any of us at any time. You're going to say, thank you very much, judges. We need to do some more practice on this. And you say to the dog, never mind, let's go out the ring. Okay. Number three, the dog runs out the ring. Well, you will find that people at these events have probably all faced that. Somebody is going to stop your dog getting into trouble because we have ring safety gates. And everyone's going to go, never mind, it could happen to all of us, whatever. So you need to go through all of the things that might happen. A hot air balloon landing by the side of the ring is something you might not have thought about, but yep, that's happened to me. And this is what makes us anxious, is not knowing what to do if. So what would give you more confidence is going through all of the things and working out how you're going to react to what could happen. Public speaking is another one that can make people tense and anxious. But let's go through all the fire drills. What are you going to do if? Now, because we've sorted this all through, we have the information, we've practiced it. Yes, I can cope with this. When Merrick was a puppy, I was walking her in our local town, which is it has a canal that goes through the middle of the town, which is probably a quiet area compared to the middle of town. And I was coming back through on the canal side. Now, like a lot of canals, there's wildfowl on the canal. So there are swans doing up and down the canal. And she's a 5-month-old Gordon setter, never seen swan before. And it caused her legs to go into paralysis. So she couldn't possibly move while the swans were there. So we were just standing looking at the swans. There's also a lot of barges that park up in the town because this is a fairly big tourist town where people want to come off the barges and go and have a look around town. And I saw coming down the towpath, which is no wider than a meter, a guy with 2 boys on bikes, and the boys had training wheels on the sides of the bikes. So they're going down this towpath, which my immediate assumption was, this is not a very good place for children that don't know how to cycle, because there's water on one side. And I'm going, really? And then coming around the corner after him were 2 hairy lurcher mix dogs, bigger than a Labrador, and I'm going like, oh my goodness me. So this guy's got 2 children, 2 boys on bikes, 2 dogs. As they approached the barges, the dogs were jumping into the barges where people were eating and being a bleeding nuisance. Oh, kick them out, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so I've got less than 3 seconds to decide where do I go to get my 5-month-old young dog out of very bad potential trouble, because I think these 2 dogs would have come up to her and gone over her with a fine tooth comb. and there's no way he had control of these dogs at all. So I would going to have to defend her against these two dogs, plus the two boys on the bicycles. So I opened somebody's garden gate and went in their garden. And this was something I'd thought of before, not in this particular situation, but I thought whatever comes first, my dog is not going to have a lifetime changing event because I didn't know what to do. So that was my rehearsal. And even to the point where if I was walking down the street, I'm still looking for a refuge, if you like. Could I step into somebody's garden? Could I step between these parked cars to get out the way? So I would not be finding myself in a position where I don't know what to do. Knowing what to do is safe. Knowing what to do when A, B, C, D, E, or F, G, H, when all these things happen, gives you a confidence in a situation. And I think we owe the dogs the same. I think we should be able to say, if this happens and you do this, you will be safe. If these dogs have got as far as me, I would have put her behind me and done whatever I needed to do to keep her safe. So if you like, not having trained that safety position would have been my error. I could have managed her in that position. I even thought about going in the water, but never mind. And so being one step ahead, if you like, to plan how we can teach the dogs what to do when you don't know what to do takes away the anxiety about not knowing what to do.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense?
Yes. Okay.
And our world is a very complicated world. We owe them that. How are they supposed to know how to react to a situation like this? They couldn't possibly. Mm-hmm. So, yes, a puppy classes and most classes, we end up having a discussion between what to do when you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. Mm-hmm. And the rock and the hard place is often, at this moment, the dogs do not have the skill to cope with it. So what can you do instead? Yes, and often you have to plan ahead, what would I do instead? Exactly. What's on offer?
Yeah, exactly. Good enough. Good news. All right.
Because we all know about those life-changing events. I don't know that I think it's overemphasized. Oh, she got attacked by one dog. Most dogs are fairly resilient. It's all the rest of the following walks and all the walks that happen before that event that dictate the future, not that one event.
Right. Yeah.
We can all stand on a tack or on a thorn. It doesn't stop us walking because we've walked for long enough without it happening. We just learn to be a bit more careful in the future. Because I did that yesterday. I thought, not doing the gardening again, wearing Crocs, because I can tell you a thorn goes straight through the bottom.
Don't get me started.
It doesn't stop me walking, but
don't get me started on your Croc affection.
Well, they're comfortable, but they should not be done for gardening. No, not good enough.
All right. A course on clean training starts August 14th on learning about dogs. This online course will focus on examining the component skills that develop really clear communication between two different species with training and teaching that leaves no doubts, no confusion, and no uncertainty. For those who live in the San Francisco Bay Area and want to get your dog nerd on, join me in person at the Humane Society of Sonoma County in Santa Rosa for a Living with Dogs course starting August 17th. Links to both courses are in our episode notes. Feel free to leave a review and a rating on iTunes and let a friend know you enjoyed the podcast.